Friday morning, just after 9 o'clock on KCMO. Happy to, as we always do each and every Friday, welcome in a Feature Friday guest. Get a little more long-form conversation with somebody in and around Kansas City. And this morning, we're happy to welcome on and say good morning to someone who you may be familiar with. I think a portion of the audience will know Johnnie Calloway. He is now the Grassroots Engagement Director for Americans for Prosperity Missouri, and he joins us on KCMO. Johnnie, good morning, my man. How are you?
I'm doing good, sir. How about yourself?
Well, you and I first met as a caller. Gosh, it must have been, 6 years ago, 5 years ago?
Yeah, about 5 years.
5 years ago.
Yeah.
All right. So now you're a social media influencer. I know that makes you blush, but I can use that word. You've racked up, millions of views on different videos on YouTube. I know you were canceled during COVID as well, but you've bounced back in a big way. You're working for Americans for Prosperity here in Missouri. And you're somebody from inner city Kansas City who nobody would ever expect to be a conservative. Tell me about what changed your life and what moved you in that direction.
Oh, man. First off, thanks for the opportunity. I say we all are born with conservative values. If we look back to the way we were raised with our grandmothers and grandfathers, no elbows on the table. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Take your shoes off when you walk in the house. Got to stand around and hold hands and pray before you eat on holidays. So those things are always rooted in me. But I think culture has a big hold on all young individuals, and a vessel can only express outwardly what it consumes inwardly. So once you hit me with 3, 4, 5, 10 years of rap music, I would be a little degenerate, But luckily, I was able to get back to my roots and make my family proud.
So the culture, you think, drags you naturally to the left?
Yes, 100%.
And then for you, was there a moment or was it just a series of things in your life? Because you've got, how many kids now?
I have 10 together, 2 deceased children, 8 living children.
My gosh.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about it. I didn't know that.
Oh, no, that's my superpower. Everybody always say, what would they do if they lost a child? I have 2 buried a row apart from each other, right at 12 Gate Cemetery. So I love life. I value every single day.
So you've got 8 children. And was there moments or moment in particular that made you kind of change your worldview as you saw it?
I should have woke up a long time ago.
How old are you?
I'm 35.
Okay, you're 30. So, yeah.
So when you live in a traumatic environment, you either run from it or you suppress it. And for so long, I just suppressed all the hurt, all the pain, all the trauma. My mother and father had really bad domestic violence. But what was unique is they both loved me. Neither one of them ever hit me, never yelled at me, never talked bad to me. Always told me I can do anything I want in this world. Spoke so much life to me, it makes no sense. But they were average people living with the environment and broken. And
right here in Kansas City.
Yes, sir. My mother overdosed on opioids in 2015. My daddy is still alive. He might be listening. What's up, Daddy? But at 16 years old, the neighborhood drug dealer was shot on my front porch. At 17, I graduated high school with no lights, no water, no gas in the home. But my parents always told me you didn't have to be a dope boy to have money. So I vividly remember going home the last day of high school and sitting on the couch crying to my mother because I didn't know what I was going to do. A lot of my friends were dying. And they say God makes no mistakes. So I started working at AT&T. And from AT&T, it transitioned to Sprint, from Sprint to Google. And in the back of my mind, I still was, like I said, culture obsessed a little bit. So I had some children. My first son passed at 18 years old from trisomy 18. But then I had a daughter. And my daughter really made me mature and grow up. And I remember it was her first day of kindergarten. And I went to the school that she was attending. It was a public school. And you had parents smoking and cussing. And that's when it hit you, the environment you in. I don't want my child around this every single day. So I applied for a job at Notre Dame de Sion as an IT guy. And I vividly remember looking at the post on LinkedIn, Indeed, and scrolling past it, saying, man, they're not going to hire me. I'm black. Mm-hmm. And then something smacked me in the back of my head and told me to go back and apply for the job. And I went through 3 rounds of interviews. And after I got that position, they told me I was hired out of 50 candidates. So that's that confidence that you got to believe in you. And if you think you can't, then you can't. If you think you can, then you can. But if you don't put the effort in, you never know. So becoming a father is really what really springboarded my growth, my maturity, but also having deceased children. But when my mother was alive, she was my babysitter. So I still could drop my kids off to my mom every weekend and go, party and stuff and hang with my homeboys. But when she overdosed, there was nobody in front of the mirror. It was just me in the mirror. And I think something that all men know is that we don't put in 100% effort. We know we can get up earlier. We know we can eat a little better. We know we could be a little nicer. We know we can slow down and calm. And they say we all have 2 lives, and the second one begins when you realize you only have one. And burying those children should have matured me, but burying my mother, I knew I had to make her proud. And I couldn't carry myself as the way I know she didn't raise me to be.
So that was 10 years ago now. So you're 25 at the time.
Yeah.
I'm sure that was a major inflection point for you. Fast forward a couple of years, and I guess that's around when you called our show for the first time.
Yeah.
And you were listening to the station, and it was an accident, right? That you found this show on this radio station.
Yeah, so we always listen to 103.3, but somehow my wife had, by mistake, turned up 103.7.
Now, let's be clear, just for people, because now we're on 95.7 FM. We got this 100,000-watt FM stick. For people that don't know, for new listeners, we were on this little FM along with 710 AM, 103.7, which was just a little 250-watt nothing FM signal. But it was right around, KPRS, big R&B, hip-hop, what would we call it? Hip-hop station here in Kansas City?
100%.
So we were right down at the time from those guys on 103.3, and we were on 103.7. So basically, what happened? You were on the wrong radio station?
Yeah. And I was leaving Hy-Vee Arena from playing basketball. We played early mornings. And I was listening. I'm like, oh, this is conservative. And I'm at the pump on 31st and Brooklyn at the gas station. I sit there and listen for about 5-10 minutes, and I realize it's local. And my first emotion was to call in, and my second thought was don't call in. And call in, you go back and forth inside your head.
Yeah.
When I go inside the store, I pay for my gas, and I decide to call in, and here we are years later.
So, yeah, I remember that. We were in the old building, and listen, the reality is there are not a lot of people that look like you or sound like you that call us. Now, there's more of them coming into the fold because the world is changing. We've grown this audience tremendously. But you were like a unicorn, right? I mean, you were a 30-year-old young black male in the inner city calling us. And was it a moment for you when you're like, I actually agree with the stuff this guy's saying right now?
Well, I kind of have.
Or you already were?
I kind of already was. So, I consumed the Larry Elder, the Thomas Sowell, the Jesse Lee Peterson. But outside of that, just growing up with a father, I watched that man get up every day and go to work. There was no excuses. No matter what, he would be drunk, he could get out of jail, and he would go make money. And I just always knew I had that same masculine energy inside of me. And when you watch the breakdown of the communities, when you're watching half your friends get murdered, when you're going to school writing RIP on lockers, when you're watching young women become, mothers at a young age, it's ignorance. But the only way you can have ignorance is lack of knowledge. Well, if somebody else controls the flow of knowledge, in a sense, they can keep you ignorant. And someone will always profit off your ignorance, whether you like it or not. So I had to become better so I could do better. And it's the example, I don't think I'm as much as an anomaly as the media or the algorithms can make it seem, right? Tupac influenced Jay-Z, Jay-Z influenced Lil Wayne influenced Young Thug influenced King Von, YNW Melly, so on. So once you get to see somebody with a different perspective, it opens the door for it to happen. So I think I'm just the first one who done broke through, but it's about to be 100 of them behind me.
So you really think that this dam is going to break and there's going to be a flood of younger, especially black men moving to the right?
1,000,000%.
But you think with that has to come a change in the culture too, right? Because
I think it will, because for the individuals who really grew up around violence, you don't want to raise your sons that way. Mm-hmm. For the individuals who you still got to go see your father in jail, you don't want to watch anybody else become that way. It's only propagated by the people who don't have to see it every single day. And I think there's enough individuals who have grew up in poverty, in violence like I have, but have made it out and able to become successful to use their voice to say, this ain't the right way.
How, listen, for those of us that didn't grow up in that kind of an environment, you obviously had a father who had some struggles, it sounds like, but also worked every day and loved you tremendously. But how hard is it to break the cycle if dad's not around? And what can change that? Because what we hear a lot is, hey, someone grew up without a dad, gets someone pregnant, they have no example to be there and be a role model for that kid and raise that child.
Yeah, I think it comes from telling young men the truth. You're responsible for your actions. We live in a victimhood society, but every time you lay down with a woman, there's a chance she could have a baby. So that's known. Now, I think the problem with a lot of young men, and I went through this in myself, is we live in a mama's boy society. where no one holds you accountable, and it's because you black, and it's because of police, and it's because of racism, and it's because of this, it's because of that, and eventually you got to get rid of the excuses.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my grandfather always said the only color that really matters is green. And before you ever make
green,
yeah,
like money?
Yeah. Because you put a white millionaire and a black millionaire in a room together, I bet the last thing they talk about is skin color.
Yeah.
But it's for the people in poverty, it's the biggest thing. And if we being honest, my brain don't know what color my skin is. Your brain is plastic.
Mm-hmm.
So I can manipulate you and mold you to think whatever I want to.
Yeah.
So if you understand anything the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve, then what story do I want to tell you? Do I want to tell you that you've been a slave and you've been oppressed, if you've never accomplished anything? Or do I want to tell you about Jack Johnson, who was a heavyweight champion in 1907? Do I want to tell you about Madam C.J. Walker, who was a black millionaire?
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to tell you about the Civil Rights Bill in 1876 by U.S. Grant? See, I can tell you a story that makes you feel like you've less than, you never can become anything. Or I can tell you a story that makes you so proud of everything that your ancestors have been through that you want to do nothing but make them smile. It's all about perspective.
It is.
Perspective is reality.
Johnnie Calloway is in studio for our Feature Friday segment. He's the Grassroots Engagement Director now for Americans for Prosperity here in Missouri. He's a lifelong Kansas Citian, and we'll keep the conversation going. I want to dive into more of the cultural topics coming up with him next on KCMO Talk Radio.